Hello and welcome back. This is the Hart House Holiday Open under 1600. This is round 4. I wanted to go over my game that I played back in 2024. Currently it's 2026, but I just wanted to go over what I need to work on and what improvements I've already made since then. So my opponent goes c4, c4, knight f6. I play knight c3. White plays knight c3. I play g6. So this is like a King's Indian sort of structure. At the time when I played this opening, I honestly didn't know what I was doing. If we skip ahead a couple moves, you see that I've been pushing a lot of pawns and actually like not deciding where I want to put my pieces. For example, when I moved my knight back, I actually didn't know where my knight was going. So for example, I maybe thought like I could have played like f5 or played like knight c7, but in these kinds of positions, it actually doesn't make any sense to place the pieces there. Mainly because white has a lot of space and we're not committing into the center. So we're not forcing white to either exchange or to trade off some of the pieces that are in the center. So when I played this move, it didn't really come with any thought or any ideas besides like maybe f5. But f5 doesn't really do much because white has the entire center, so it's not like I'm getting like a big advantage because my pieces aren't even developed. So bishop goes to g5. I push my pawn forward to f6. In my development now, I feel like this move f6 actually like isn't too good anymore. Mainly because like I'm committing too many pawn moves in the opening. Like I should be developing my pieces, trying to get my pawns into the center before I commit any of these pawn pushes. So bishop h4, queen c7, d5. I put my knight in the center. So putting my knight in the center is probably like the best thing that I could do, mainly because I'm opening up my bishop, but also putting my knight in a better position to actually like contest some space against white's forces. The only problem is my knight on e8. My knight on e8 doesn't really have a home right now. At the time, I just completely abandoned like trying to help out this knight. So it's good to see that in the games that I now play, I'm actually a little bit more aware of where my pieces are being placed. So he puts his knight in the center. I play g5. Bishop goes back. And since I understand that my bishops want more space, they want an open diagonal, I do play f5. So I do think this is a good move. I somehow knew what to do, but somehow like didn't know at the same time. So he plays this move f4. I think f4 is like very, very committal. It's really hard for white to actually take advantage of this. And even though it pushes my knight back if I don't take, for example, I still get a decent position because I get my pieces into the game and I can start attacking. But in this case, luckily, I'm able to play g takes f4, which is what I played. B takes f4, and notice how like easy my play is. So I was in a bad spot a couple moves ago, but now since white committed to the f4 push, I actually have a chance to attack him. So with bishop takes f4, first I start with knight g6. So knight g6 allows my knight to attack the bishop with a tempo. So if he doesn't move his bishop, I'm gonna take the bishop and then I'm gonna have the bishop pair, but also clarifying a little bit more of the central tension between our pieces. So if I end up taking the bishop, the rook takes, and then I can probably attack it later on with like for example like e5, and then if knight takes, my bishop can take, or maybe like I take in the center and then we trade pieces, which isn't that good for white. But my opponent played bishop h2. So this was a very bad move, mainly because of my next move, queen b6. So queen b6 attacks the knight, and notice how the knight is pinned to the king on this diagonal right here. So the knight can't move. So we're also attacking this b2 pawn. So there's a lot of different targets in this position right here. My bishop is also attacking the knight in the center. So there's 2 attackers and 1 defender. White has 1 queen. And I have 2 pieces attacking the knight. So in this case, it's kind of difficult to imagine what he could play. For example, like, I don't think there's any move that he can play that defends the knight. So instead, he has to spend a move to get out of the pin. But fortunately, I'm able to take the knight. So I remember back then that like this was sort of inaccurate. I should have played queen takes d4, mainly because if I'm up a piece and I just exchange queens, I'm just going to be up 1 piece. And I don't have to worry about the complications. I just have to play accurately and just win the game from there. In this case, I don't know what came over me, but I just wanted to take the piece, and then I completely was blindsided by the move knight a4. Luckily, it still works for me, because once I move my queen, I'm attacking the knight, right? So if the queen ever moves off of this diagonal defending the knight, I can just take the bishop. I can just take the knight, actually. Yeah. So he takes my bishop, I take his knight. So that's what we're going for over here. So he takes my bishop, I take his knights, and he tries to clarify things in the center by like playing e takes f5. So right here is an important point in the game. At the time, I just didn't realize that, hey, like, I'm actually just up a piece and I can just simplify. So I thought the move rook takes f5 was good, mainly because like, oh, I'm trying to like simplify and like hopefully things are okay. But then I realized that like white can actually play bishop to d3. And bishop d3 basically tells black that like, oh, if you exchange these rooks, then I'm gonna get like a whole attack down the f file. So at the time, like I didn't realize that like this was white's plan. So I fell for it, taking the rook, taking back, and then notice how my pieces, my knight and bishop, are still not developed. So I didn't realize that like I'm so far behind in development that like this does not help defend my king side at all. So what I should have done is actually just leave the rook here and just play knight g7. Knight g7 defends my rook, so if bishop takes, my knight can just take back, and the rook can't take because then my bishop takes. And even though I give up the exchange, for example, bishop is worth 3 points, the rook is worth 5 points, right? So if we leave it here, sure, I'm down a rook and like maybe like 2 points to exchange, but I have an extra piece. So this factor actually helps me in this case because my knight actually defends this pawn, so there's no infiltration. The bishop is looking at this pawn, so it's like it doesn't really do anything. And then next turn I'm just gonna move my bishop and then get my rook into the game. So this is a position that like I clearly should just go for. I'm up a piece, my pieces are coming into the game, and I'll be okay. Instead, I went for the complicated, trying to like simplify and like very lazily like just did it automatically without thinking. I didn't believe that white had an attack because this bishop's out of play, but I underestimated the bishop pair, so the other bishop actually puts a lot of pressure along my position. So knight g7, queen f2. totally didn't see this move. I didn't realize that, okay, white can actually like threaten along this file and actually get into my position. So I play bishop f5. For example, if I just play like bishop d2, I'm pretty sure either white can check, and then eventually I think he can actually take here. So you can either take this pawn or this pawn, and then all my pieces are going to be attacked soon. The rook is going to come into the game. So for example, let's say queen takes. This rook is going to come into the game soon. So I really have to be careful in how I attack the king, or how I like defend my king. And then this bishop is like a great defender. If I ever check along the back rank, he just moves it to block. So this was what I saw in the game. So I was like, I was a little surprised because I didn't realize queen f2 actually came with a big threat because he can just remove one of my defenders. And this is a key defender because it defends a pawn, but also attacks white's position as well. So I underestimated the light squared bishop. Takes, queen takes. And then I thought I could get away with rook f8. In actuality, it doesn't really give me many options. So the options I thought I had was that, okay, the queen is gonna move, he gives me a check, and then I just run away. But he actually gets into a position where like I can't defend any of my pawns. So queen e6, king g7, rook takes f8, king takes f8, queen c8, check, and then king goes to f7. And now we see my b7 pawn is under attack, and I don't really have any good checks. So queen takes, queen d1 check, bishop back, and then here is the final decisive moment. This was my last mistake, which was c takes d5. Now this move is really, really bad because, first of all, it gets rid of a pawn from my pawn chain. It also opens up the position, and since my king is in the center being attacked by the queen, I actually don't have a way to defend any of my pawns. So I'm gonna just lose this pawn, and then I'm gonna lose this pawn. And with both pawns gone, and white has a couple pass pawns, it's really hard for me to actually defend. If we trade queens, for example, then my knight can't really defend against this threat here. So queen takes, c takes. I play a6 smartly because the bishop was gonna attack. Bishop h2. And I'm still holding on, but it's a little difficult to understand what my pieces should be doing. So this is a classic knight versus bishop endgame. And what I learned over the years is that if I just put my pawns on the opposite colored squares, it actually stops white from capturing any of my pawns. And just because two of my pawns are on dark squares, that doesn't mean that like I have to like right now put it on light squares. Right now it's blocking white's activity from actually like getting into the game. So the mistake comes in much later, like right here when I play a5. Now a5, I just did it with like no intention. I should have thought for a longer time, but a5 basically puts the pawn on the dark square. So if we can imagine the bishop just going all the way to like e1, for example, he just gets to attack the pawn for free, and my knight has to defend, and my king is not even close enough to get to the pawn either. So he maneuvers all the way. I tried to push my pawns, thinking, okay, maybe I can push my pawns forward to at least promote and threaten promotion, so that when he takes my pawn, I have a tempo advantage. But I just don't end up getting it, and since I have to sacrifice my knight for it, for example, like when my knight goes to b4, he takes, I take, his pawn is faster, his king is into the game a little bit more and can defend the pawn. So he pushes the pawn forward, I play d4, and he finds the correct move, which is king c4. Now king c4, he basically is going for is going to collect my pawn. So, for example, if I go over, I think he has... I think he can actually push the pawn. Yeah. So he pushes the pawn, and then if I go for the pawn itself, I think he can actually push the other pawns. So these two pawns against my one pawn makes it very hard for me to stop a promotion. So I go for the pawns. I can play h4. I can play takes. But just because his king is just in a better position, it's much harder for me to defend. Because let's say instead of king d3, he plays like h5. And even if I play like h6, if he just sacrifices the pawn, he still gets to promote on the other side of the board. So I did resign at like right here at king d6 because I understood that like, okay, his king can just indefinitely just stand here, and when I go for the pawn, he's just gonna push these pawns. And I can't push up because if I ever, let's say he plays a6, right? If I ever play like e4, he's just gonna take my pawn. So I just don't have a way of pushing through, or else I'm just gonna lose my pawns. And he has all the moves in the world. I could play like h5, but if he... I still have to keep in touch with this pawn over here. So my king goes to c6. Let's say he pushes this pawn. I have to push once. And then he just plays h4, and if I chase the pawn, then obviously he's gonna make a pass pawn right here. And I can't be at both sides of the board. So overall, this game was well played. We both made a lot of mistakes. I definitely should have converted the game, especially since I was up a piece. But this idea of like making the game harder for myself has been really prevalent in my play. So what I've learned is that, okay, first I gotta develop my pieces. That's the best thing that I can probably do because it gives me more opportunities to find tactical sequences. When I'm up a piece, it's okay to sacrifice the exchange. And another lesson is I don't want to trade unless I'm forced to trade. So unless I find like a winning continuation, I probably just shouldn't trade right away. I also have to remember that pushing my pawns onto the on the opponent's bishop color is like is the worst idea I can possibly do. Like I shouldn't put my pawn on that weak square. And then I also have to understand, okay, it's a knight versus bishop game. So I'm trying to play against the bishop. And lastly, I need to understand that I have to work on my endgame. My endgame and tactical awareness needs to be there where I can calculate everything. I can't be lazy about it. I have to like see everything all the way through. If something looks terrible for me, I shouldn't just like play it. I need to think about it a little bit more, take more time in the endgame so that I can convert the game without much hassle.